Hey everyone, welcome back to Navajo Tea Time. And this episode, we're going to talk about, I guess, kind of current events, just big topic events that's been happening the past couple of months. And because we pre-record these, we're not always on top of the news. We're not a news channel. Don't follow us for news. So one topic that I was going to talk about, I literally, the morning of this recording, I saw a Facebook post of it where you no longer need a teaching degree to be hired as a teacher in the state of Arizona. And let's just say, I know this isn't, what do they call it? Fake news? Because then later on in the afternoon, I got a text from someone saying they got hired as a teacher. And I know for a fact they don't have a teaching degree, but they really needed a job. So I'm really happy that this decision, this law, is benefiting them in a very positive way. But
I'm worried. As a mother with children
of a small child who has to go to school in Arizona. And then when I told my husband this, he's like, well, you know, just because you have a teaching degree doesn't mean you're a great teacher. And I'm like, yeah, but teachers still need standards. You still need a background check for teachers. You should, you know, they learn specific tools.
Like they have training.
Yeah.
They're trained on various things. I know a few teachers and they're utilizing their degrees. Yeah.
It's more than just, oh, let's open a textbook, let's read this textbook and learn something. There's like a lot of psychological techniques, a lot of, you know, how to deal with children of various mental stabilities.
Yep, there's a lot of training in empathy, like emotional intelligence, strategy for like managing so many children at once. Like, shoot, I've got 7 and it's like it's hard. And then imagine a teacher having to manage like 30 kids every day.
30 plus kids. And I know there's a teacher shortage, but the answer isn't to just get rid of the teaching requirements to become a teacher. It should be to have better pay, to have better supportive staff, because just because you hire more teachers doesn't mean they don't need a TA, doesn't mean they don't need at least an hour to prep their lesson plan, doesn't mean that they have to spend their salary on basic school supplies for the classroom. You know, the problems were clear and fixable, and none of them were, let's remove the education part of teaching. So
I mean, how often, so maybe our audience can answer this question, but how often do we benefit when the standards are lowered? You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like, just from my personal perspective, I feel like standards should be high. You know what I mean? Because when you have a high bar, people are going to work to meet that bar. And even if they fall a little bit below, they're still pretty high up, right? As opposed to if you have like low standards, then that just means that people are not, like, people don't just like elevate for the sake of elevating. Like, some people don't have that motivation. You have to set standards so people are going to want to have something to strive for, something to work toward. And when it comes to education, I mean, Arizona is like, weren't we ranked like 40th or 45th in the country?
I think we were 48th.
It's like really bad. I know, and now they're eliminating the standards for teachers. It's like, really? Is that what we want here? Because
no, I think
I don't want.
We had a clear definition of what we wanted for the teachers and for teaching standards and for schools, and they're like, no, I don't want to do any of that stuff. So we're just gonna remove the requirements to teach children.
That's worrisome, because I have a son who's going to be going into kindergarten. So he could be getting an education from people that aren't even qualified to provide an education. That's
And
or trained to,
and
that's insane.
I know people were talking about like, oh, public schools basically just sending them to daycare anyways. Well, not anymore, because you still need to have early child development training and
Mhm.
certificates to be hired for daycares.
I mean, even at so this is my experience with that. At the college level, I remember when I was going to the University of Arizona, all of my professors had PhDs. And then I went to NAU, which I was upset about, but I ended up graduating from there. I was getting an education from people who had their master's degrees, which is fine, right? You need a master's degree to teach, but the quality of my education was diminished. I noticed it. The standards were different. The way they conducted, themselves in a classroom, and the way they provided information to the students was different. You know what I mean? So people who have a PhD, they're not at the same level as people who have a master's degree. And I was pissed because I was paying the same amount of money basically to get an education from from professors that had their master's degree as opposed to professors that had their PhDs. And I noticed it was vastly different. So, and I was upset about that. And so I became more active in the classes I was enrolling in, making sure that I was only taking classes from professors that had their PhDs, because that's my education, right? I'm in charge of that. But students, they don't have any say really if they're going to minimize the standards for kids as low as kindergarten. That's worrisome to me
Yeah, that's what I was
personally.
telling Gurney. I'm like, well, now we have to be extra vigilant on like the
Mm-hmm.
classes and where to send my daughter
Mm-hmm.
to school. And
Let's move to New Mexico. Let's go buy a house out there. Forget
uh,
it. You know, there's like students now where if you're a resident of New Mexico, you can go to state schools tuition free now.
I think that's the same for Arizona.
They barely pass it though. They're just copying New Mexico.
I can't stand the driving in New Mexico.
I know, it's the worst. It's like the absolute worst.
I mean, I already have severe anxiety driving in Arizona, and
Mm-hmm.
in New Mexico, I'm like, I can't see, I can't help you. I'm just closing my eyes. If I die,
We'll
I
just go
die.
buy like some huge pueblo. Both families will go into it. We'll buy one of those big pueblo houses. And you guys can have this wing and we'll have this wing. We'll have a big yard.
It'll
We'll
be a
live happily ever
commune.
after. And our kids will go to good schools. A commune, gross. No, that's not what I meant. Dang it. Okay, let's find, I don't know. Man, that's
It's
so
very
disappointing.
worrisome, and I feel like I'm being forced to have to do things that I don't like doing.
Like interview all of their teachers. Like,
Well,
so.
yeah, like grill the
Mm-hmm.
teachers, and
Mm-hmm.
also go to school boards and raise a stink at school boards. It's like, hey, no, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want them to be hired because they don't have the education,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna
Well,
do.
as long as the Navajo Nation doesn't, follow along, because the Navajo Nation has the ability to we can set our own standards for the most part, right?
I
And
mean, we could, but when have we actually ever enforced it? Going back to elections, hey, election candidates, make sure all our teachers are certified.
for the good of our children, do it for the children.
Yes.
That's crazy. Okay, well, we're upset about that. How
Something
upset are you? Tell us down below.
on a scale of 1 to 10, how upset are you?
I know. Do you remember was it Shrek 4 where Rumpelstiltskin's like, I'm gonna put my angry wig on, and then he like that's me right now.
Angry hat.
Yeah. Okay, so our next topic regarding current events is Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court overturned it, and I am very upset with the justices who played a role in that. I was on a camping trip, on a backpacking trip that weekend, and we had a conversation about it, while we were hiking. And one person told me that when she found out, she like broke down in tears. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of people that are really affected by it like that. I was also listening to The Daily, and they had done interviews at different clinics. And some clinics, people were like celebrating and they're like happy and cheering. And then other clinics, it was just like they were in despair, you know? They were like, wow, we have to shut down, you know, there's nothing we can do. And those clinics were in the States where they had what were they called? Like gunshot laws or slingshot laws, or what was it called? Do you remember? Like trigger laws, is that what it was called? But they had this legislation already in place. They were just waiting for something so that they could pull the trigger and shut it all down. And those are the states that were going to eliminate it, you know, because it's a state decision now. So yeah, what are your thoughts, Kelsey? And women losing their rights to get an abortion.
I mean, yeah, they basically lost the, I guess, geographical right anywhere to get an abortion. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
some
like,
states, yeah, are like making it illegal, and then other states they're going to maintain the rights, but now it's not kind of like a blanket right for women.
yeah, and I know there's some arguments like, oh well, they're turning it over to the state and they're letting the state decide, but then
Mm-hmm.
it shouldn't be a state decision. It should be a medical decision
Mm-hmm.
and a personal decision,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I feel about it. Like, I'm trying to figure. I don't know. Like I said, I've been living under a rock. I've been having a lot of family emergencies, and so
Mm-hmm.
this just feels like just another thing on top of all the stuff I've been dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm grateful that I've never felt like I was in a position to where I felt like this would be a issue for me
Mm-hmm.
personally, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And but I do know like friends from high school and things who've had to make some of these decisions, and
Mm-hmm.
I've never judged them and I never will judge them on their decisions because it's
Mm-hmm.
theirs and I don't have to deal with any of their consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I feel like in Arizona the law should come back up to be revoted because who knows when that law was created. I don't, and so it should be back up to debate if it's back on the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's definitely this the opportunity to recognize your own privilege, you know, and acknowledge that some of us have never been in that position where we had to make that choice or where it was forced upon us one way or another, you know what I mean? But for those that's their life, you know, and that's a choice they have to make. I feel for them. Like I would never want to impose my own personal beliefs on another person, where the point where I'm at the point where I'm going to vote to take away another person's right to make a decision for themselves. That's not, I don't believe in doing that at all. And we're having this conversation in our household with the kids because like in Farmington there's all these pro-life signs up where they have like pictures of fetuses and embryos and stuff, and there's, you know, like it almost looks like propaganda, but I get it, you know, pro-lifers are very vocal. And there are some people also protesting by the road in Flagstaff down by Tacos Los Altos on the west side, and they were like yelling at cars and calling people murderers and it was all crazy, and the kids were like, what's going on, you know? And so we told them, you know, that's a pro-life protest and they're against abortion. And like, what's abortion? Abortion's when you terminate a pregnancy. And they're like, why would you do that? You know, like, isn't that a bad thing? And because they're asking like, why are they saying it's murder, you know? So I told them that, you know, there's a lot of people that believe that, you know, an embryo, or like when a seed, you know, when a seed and an egg come together, it forms an energy spark, right? And it starts to form a life. So life from conception, it's a sacred thing. And a lot of people believe that. I believe that personally too. I don't think that an embryo is not important or not a life. I do believe that, so I was telling them, some people, they believe that. Therefore, if you were to terminate that they consider that murder, like you're killing that life force, and they're against that. So they want to create laws against it. And they were like, oh, okay. And then we had to tell them, but there are some instances where, that's necessary. Like if the child or the baby that's growing has really bad like birth defects, that's going to affect its life for the rest, like it might not be fully formed, it might have a sickness, the mother might be sick, her life might be in danger, and the only way for her to live is to terminate the pregnancy. And they were like, when does that happen? So like, well, this is when it happens, this is what can cause it. And they were like, oh, like they didn't even think about that, And then I also told them, like, also sometimes bad things happen, to people, and they make that choice even though it's hard for them. But I told them, I personally don't think there's women running around just getting pregnant for the sake of getting pregnant so that they can have an abortion. Like that's not what they're doing. There aren't women running around like, I'm gonna get pregnant and I'm gonna get an abortion today, like they're gonna order takeout or something. Like that's not, it's a very serious thing. It's a medical procedure, it's nothing to take lightly. It's a life-altering decision, and it's hard. And so I was telling them it's not some frivolous thing. And I think sometimes people paint it like that. Like, oh, these silly women, making these choices that they're not equipped to make for themselves over their life or their body. I think that's what the narrative is sometimes. And I was telling them, like, no, that's not the situation most times. I was like, probably 99.9% of the time you have people that, it's a very tough thing. And so I told them, like, think about that, have some empathy and pray that you're never in that situation. And they're like, oh, okay. So like having to have these conversations with kids that are like in high school and middle school, and then letting them ask questions about it. And it's not even because it's something that I want to impose on them. It's just because there's all these signs, along the road, there's protesters yelling. Like we could hear them from our table because we're eating outside. So, we have to take the time to make them understand. So then when this happened, when, Roe versus Wade was overturned, I was like, oh man, like I felt upset about it. You know what I mean? Even though personally, I would never do that. Like I would never get an abortion. Luckily, I've never had to be in that position where that was a choice that was on the table, but I would never do that for myself. But I'm not going to be the person that's like, I'm going to take your right away and your right away and your right away just because it's something I wouldn't do. So yeah, lots of tough conversations that had to be had. So yeah, the kids are kind of like thinking about it, and they're just kind of asking questions like, what does that mean for us? And I told them that, that decision was a pivotal decision that was made when it came to women's rights in the 70s and in the years that followed. And, it kind of had a ripple effect on the ability of women to basically decide for themselves, have some autonomy over their own bodies and make choices for themselves. Whereas before, a lot of those choices were made for them. Women didn't have the right. And again, we're in that place again where we don't have the right. It doesn't change the situation though. It doesn't change that bad things are still going to happen. And, medical procedures are still going to have to be made because we live in an imperfect world where things happen like that, so it's really sad to me.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the major arguments is a religious argument. And for a law, that shouldn't be the case. Because like you stated your belief, but then there's also people who believe like the fetus, the baby doesn't have a soul or anything until it's born, like reincarnation and everything. There's different beliefs, and so singling out one specific belief to base your law on basically negates everyone else's belief.
It does. And in a country where we supposedly honor all religions, like that law is BS. You know what I mean? It's like you're not honoring the beliefs and the cultural, like, because a lot of there's like cultural practices and there's religious and spiritual beliefs, and there's so many of them in this country. You know, there's so many people that come from all parts of the world that carry different ways of, you know, believing, thinking, understanding, you know. And I think that that one, you know, these blanket laws that are made for us that are going to directly affect us, that are based on, you know, just a very like one way of believing, it just seems very unfair.
That's a nice way to put it.
I know. I don't want to be all cussing on here, but you know what?
But you know, like when I read comments and people are saying, oh, it's just people wanting to have like birth control, it's like it's just an easy birth control. I'm like, it is not an easy birth control. Your body, like being pregnant is a major toll on your body, whether you want the baby or not. And some people say, oh, you can't call a baby a parasite. That baby is a parasite, you know? It feeds off of everything the mother ingests and has. And if you don't have enough nutrients, you don't have enough calcium, the baby leaches the calcium from your bones and you can mess up your teeth forever. My eyesight got really messed up when I was pregnant. I even got gestational diabetes. That baby is wreaking havoc on your body, whether you're happy to have a baby or not, you know. So being forced to carry a baby to full term when you don't want it, there's a lot of scary scenarios that women and people who get pregnant would do. Like, what if they starve the baby? What if they starve themselves to starve the baby? And how do you prosecute that? Because they're not eating. It's them not feeding themselves, but now they're not feeding that baby. So then they're essentially a parasite because that person has to eat, and you're trying to force feed people and force people to take care of their bodies to make sure the baby comes to full term. That's still forcing something on other people's bodies. And then even after the baby's born, if the person never wanted it, it's not going to get the love and nurturing it needs to become a thriving member of society.
Yeah, and you can't always put all that on the mother either. Like, oh, she doesn't want a baby, what's wrong with her? Like, no, it takes two people to have a child, to create a child, to have a child, to raise a child. It takes more than one person, you know. But I feel like so much responsibility falls on the woman when, you know, I know for a fact that a pregnancy is so much more enjoyable when your partner is there beside you to go through it with you, you know, to take care of you. And then once the baby is born, to provide for that child, not just for a little while, but for the child's entire life. Like once you have a child, that's your responsibility for the rest of your life. And there are too many men that have children and abandon them. There's too many men that aren't stepping up to that responsibility. There's too many men that make women feel like they are not worthy of that commitment. And that's BS, you know what I mean? And so, but no one's talking about that, you know what I mean?
It gets mentioned every once in a while, but it's never like, oh, force the father to stay, because then you're forcing two people into a relationship that's
like,
going to be
where's the
toxic.
Legislation there, right? You know what I mean? Like, where's the legislation that's regulating men's ability to have children with women, multiple women throughout the rest of their lives? Like, no, like we're supporting, you know, male enhancement drugs. Insurance covers that for men who might have problems in that area. But not with, you know, female birth control. It's just really unfair. It's really unfair and it's really messed up. And I really do think that the best way to move forward is, I really think men and women need to partner up and find a good solution. Because I mean, yeah, people say we can't have the government regulating everything we do, right? We can't, just because they say A, B, or C doesn't mean that we have to abide by that. But the truth is, if you're going to create a law that's going to have a woman be charged with murder, because she decides to, there's even some sketchy language too in the law about, like, even if a woman were to miscarriage, they could look into that and have to do an investigation, and if it seems a little sketchy, they could charge her for murder. She could go to jail. Like, what's that all about? You know what I mean? That's something that came up in that conversation during the backpacking trip, and I was like, what the hell? You know what I mean? So it's really crazy how, how the government feels like it has the right to, you know to impose these restrictions.
I don't think anymore. It's not the government anymore. I feel like it's like hyper-focused lobbyist groups who are pushing these laws.
Yeah, but when Supreme Court justices that are appointed by the presidents are passing it and they're making decisions for us, and the Supreme Court is not equal at all, it's mostly male dominant body, a legislative body that's making.
But they didn't pass a law, they removed a law. And then they're bringing it to the states. And so you have to like look into your own state wherever you are and look at what their laws are now. And I think Arizona had one from the past that was just kind of like put in a box because of Roe versus Wade. And now that Roe versus Wade is gone, it's active again. So gotta like dig deep into those old laws and see if the terminology needs to be updated. Like I said, like now that it's back on the table, it needs to be reworked and looked at to make sure like a random miscarriage can't be considered murder, because there's nothing she could have done about it.
Yep, pregnancy is a very fragile thing, and I think for people who've never been pregnant or don't have the ability to ever be pregnant, that's something that they can't understand. You know what I mean? They don't understand they don't understand what it's like, you know what I mean? How delicate you are in that situation. And you're right, having a life force literally like feed off of you, that's a real thing. Like I did feel like my children were like sucking the life out of me literally when I was pregnant with them. You know what I mean? And even now, I'm so connected to them that I can feel their energy. When they're down, I'm down. When they're hurt, I'm hurt. When they're not well, I can feel it. It hurts my heart. And so we have that connection, and I know that I can alleviate a lot of that. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of, and when you're pregnant, it's like them inside your body. You can literally feel their life force. You can feel their energy, even their personality. You know what I mean? So it's really interesting. But
yeah. Oh, also, I saw another like Facebook news thing where this pregnant woman got pulled over in the HBO lane in Texas, but she argued that there's two people in the vehicle because of their old law, and so it's getting taken to court. And she's like, you can't have it both ways. Either I'm two people or I'm not. So you can't give me a ticket.
Nice. Good for her.
Just one little speck of giggle, I guess, at the end of this really heavy topic.
I know it is a heavy topic. So I think like what I've been waiting for is like a response from the candidates too about what they think about this and how does it apply to, our sovereignty and ability to provide certain kinds of health care for Diné people on the Navajo Nation. How does Roe versus Wade apply? Because we're in multiple states, right? So we're in Arizona and New Mexico. So I do wonder about that. What do the candidates think about that? And where do they weigh in on all of this? So, but
I'd be interested to see how many people
at the forums.
I was gonna say I'd be interested to see how many people cite religious reasonings.
Well, I was privy to a conversation about this because there was a social media thread that was going out a couple months ago. It was saying that abortion is sacred. That's what the messaging was. It said abortion is sacred. And it was utilizing Navajo culture specifically, saying that kind of giving permission to people, saying this is a part of our culture and this has been done in the past and blah blah blah. And I guess it made its way through social media to Hatathli, who saw it, and they're like, what in the world? They're like, so I was privy to that conversation where they were talking about it, and they were like, this person's wrong and they're putting out misinformation, you know, because in our culture, life is a life and life is sacred, and we're not trying to end life at any point. We're trying to get to 102 years old. You know what I mean? That's the goal. And so it was really interesting to hear that conversation. And it was also interesting to hear someone say that, you know, in many ways, people would consider Diné traditionalists as conservative, you know, and I guess I never really thought about it like that, but to have someone voice it like that, I was like, no kidding, huh? You know, those values are in alignment with a lot of conservative values, you know, but I thought it was also interesting to like hear the different perspectives of people as they weighed in on, you know, this information that was being put out on social media.
Sorry.
What was that? Just kidding.
It's the rain and the storm and the the barometric pressure is messing with my brain.
Okay, well, I think we can end that conversation. Super heavy, but I'm curious to see what our viewers think about some of these topics, about our education going down the toilet. Just kidding. In Arizona. And what you guys think about Roe v. Wade.
So, yeah, and you know, just don't attack each other in the comment section, otherwise I'll delete it. You know, healthy, I don't want to say fact-based discussions, but you know, don't attack the person's personality or character, or calling them evil or stuck up or whatever. You know, make it about the discussion and not about the person you're discussing with.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm gonna stop all the conversations. All right. Bye, guys.
You're not supposed to be threatening the audience.
For this one.
Yeah, I know.
Be civil. Don't attack each other. Talk about the discussion. Don't, you know.
Yeah, be civil. Be nice, everyone. Be cool. Okay, whatever. Bye, everyone. Thank you.